How's it going, guys? The Lions have done it. They've started off the test in the best way physically possible, coming through with a big win, 27-19 over the Wallabies. I want to break this down because there is a fair amount to go through. So, as always, please like, subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. And let's get into it. So, first of all, we have to talk about the dominance that the Lions have had. The Lions have been dominant from word go. The the Wallabies, they did put up a relatively good fight. They really did make they really did make the Lions sweat at times, especially in the second half. The back end of the second half, we started to see the Wallabies really start to get into the swing of things. We saw them running better. We saw them, traveling better with the ball, and they actually managed to get over a couple tries, which was actually, pretty good. A majority of the game, the the Wallabies were struggling to get 10 points on the board. So this was a very good game. It was a very good start for the Lions. A lot of progress needs to be made. I mean, obviously, the Wallabies are without, quite a few players. So it's going to be interesting to see how everybody's going to line up for the second game. But this is very promising. So I was, like I say, I was quite pleased with the Lions, their offense, their defense. They looked strong up until, like I say, the back end of the game. They 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 were very well drilled. They getting back into position. Their passing was on point. Their kicking was on point. Dan Sheehan had a phenomenal game and continues to show why he is quite possibly the best hooker in world rugby. Ellis Genge was such a big player. He was running so hard. The guy, they needed to double and triple up on Genge at points in order to stop him. But we've had big performances from Tom Curry, from Ty Byrne, from Maro Toje with big tackles. I think Ty Byrne himself got over 20 tackles in the game. He was just an absolute beast. This was the first game that I was actually kind of confident in Ty Byrne being. Sorry, it's 23 tackles. It was the first game that I was confident with seeing Ty Byrne at 6. You know, I was confident with seeing him at 6. I was actually really happy with that. I mean, he was killing it. Same thing with Dan Sheehan. I think he barely missed a single tackle the entire game. Same thing with Ty Byrne. Maro Toje again, absolute beast. Tom Curry came off. I think he ended up injuring his wrist, but he gave that kind of performance. He's been a little bit lackluster, but today he was on point. He was on fire. Another player to mention, Jack Conan, 4 defenders beaten. He was just consistent. He had that leadership on the field. He had that presence on the field as well. He was there when was needed. He made big tackles as well. So I was very happy with the all round performance of the Lions. I felt the backs went missing a little bit, but otherwise, Jameson Gibson Park, Finn Russell had a good partnership. And like I say, this is very promising. 27-19. If the Wallabies didn't bang in those 2 tries late in the second half, it would have looked like a much bigger difference, a lot more control. I do feel that the Lions let off, the gas a little bit. They, you know, I don't want to say they allowed them, but I feel they did let off the gas a bit, which the Wallabies took full control of, and they really made the most out of it. Hence why they got these points, but still not a perfect performance. I think we do still have a lot more to see from the Lions. We still got another 2 tests. We have the First Nations next, though. So we have the First Nations, and then we have the Wallabies just after that. So yeah, we still have a good amount of rugby left on this Lions tour. But yeah, it was there was a lot of back and forth. I think what's his name, Tizano. He played well. I think he had a brilliant game. He also bagged himself a try as well. which was which was really really nice. I thought McCarthy had a monstrous game. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, and then he ended up getting taken off for Ollie Chesham, who I think still performed pretty well. But yeah, it was just. I said this before. The Lions will dominate in terms of the set pieces, which I feel that they have done. They were pretty solid when it came down to set pieces. Let's check out that statistics. So yeah, they I mean they did all right. So the Wallabies had 8 scrums, 100%, 80% line out win, 4 restarts. And then the Lions had 6 scrums, 83%, 83% line out win. So obviously could have been better. And looking at the stats, you will see that they've actually done pretty well in just how much at points the Lions had to defend. But for instance, you look at the attacks. So the Wallabies had 184 passes, 135 carries, 239 meters, post contact meters, 4 line breaks. The Lions had 141 passes, 107 ball carries, 268 meters post contact, 6 line breaks. And then in terms of defense, the Wallabies had 147 tackles made, 31 tackles missed with an 83% tackle completion, which is still relatively good, to the Lions' 187 tackles, 20 missed with a 90% completion. Um, so, yeah, the Lions really made the most out of, um, you know, out of what they had and what they were given. Because, like I say, at points, statistically, the Wallabies actually played really, really well. But it's just that final that final, you know, that final end that they just couldn't muster. I think it was Harry Potter. Even Harry Potter, I think he could have had a try as well, but he was just short of the line. I think it was also a little bit of bad luck for the line for the Wallabies. I felt like they could have had a couple more points and a couple more tries as well if things had gone their way, because they did like to do those grubber balls, and those grubber balls were causing the Lions a fair amount of trouble. Um, but it just I just felt like, especially in the back end of the game, that they would be hitting those grubbers, but just nobody was chasing. Nobody was running after it. They left the Lions to pick up the pieces, and the Lions are in general very hard to break down. So they did have some good points through the game, some scary points, but it was just that final, those final bits. But I do feel that the Aussies were a little bit unlucky. If things had, fell just a little bit better, if the ball had to spin a little bit more inside instead of out, we could have seen the Wallabies pick up much more points. So yeah, there is a lot to learn, right? Andy Farrell, he's going to dissect this game, as am I. I'm going to be watching the game later again. Um, and it's going to be a case of how do we how do we improve? How do we fix the holes, right? Because there were holes shown for the Lions. There were holes shown for the Aussies. Who's gonna fit it best? Because at points, the Aussies work their passing game pretty well. Um, I just felt like at times they were doing a lot for no end product, right? So the Lions are going to need to fix how they're able to keep that on, because how they're able to keep the pressure on. And you know again, I'm not sure if it's a case of, look, the Lions let off the pedal, which the Aussies took full control of, or whether it was a thing of the Aussies kind of started to manage to work and break their way into the game and start to find little gaps and holes in the Lions defense. So both teams are going to be going in to the next game looking at how they can improve. What are they going to do? Honestly, individually, the Lions had phenomenal players. Same thing with the Wallabies. I felt, what's his name, Linag. He had a pretty solid game. I do feel at points Suwali he went missing, but otherwise, you know it was a good performance. I'm not about to say that the Aussies put in a bad performance. The first half was bad from the Wallabies. They went missing. They were just lacking that intensity. They were lacking that power. They just didn't have end product. Second half, though, they started to kick things into gear, and they made it a much more difficult game for the Lions than I think even the Lions were expecting. So props to them on that. They now just need to start with this kind of intensity. They need to start with this in the next game, because if they want to be getting anything out of this tests, they need to improve. They need to become far more far more physical, because when you have the likes of your Ellis Genge, your Dan Sheehan, your Tyke Furlongs, Maro Toje, who was an absolute beast today, um, McCarthy, all of these guys are physical specimens, right? And this is why I feel Taniela Tupou, the Tongan Thor, would have worked well in a game like this, where you have all that physicality, where where you want a big monstrous man like him to be, chopping down legs and just absolutely obliterating people. So is a good performance. A lot needs to be worked on. I think if the Lions come into the next game, thinking that the Wallabies are not going to be making changes, and it's going to run the same way, they're going to lose. The Lions need to fix some issues with the backs. Like I say, I felt at points the backs just weren't working that well. Um, but look, look at the scoreline. You know, look at the scoreline. There's reason for that. They the Lions are the Lions. They played pretty well. They played pretty well, and this is just me. This is just me nitpicking at issues, instead of you know them having a bad game. It's just one of these, because we look at the tries. So we got one from Tuipilutu on the 9th minute, which was brilliant. Tom Curry, Dan Sheehan, and then three conversions from Finn Russell, two penalties from Finn Russell, and a penalty on the 74th minute from Marcus Smith. Then for Australia, they had tries from Jorgensen, Tizano, Tate McDermott, and then two of the tries were converted by Donaldson. So they need work, because if you look at the last few tries, so we had Tizano on the 68th minute and then Tate McDermott on the 79th minute, right? Um, both of those were scored. So what's that? 14 points. 14 points in the last 10 minutes of the game. That makes all the difference. So let me know what you guys think. Please, as always, like, subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.